Hello and welcome to my first overview video. Today I'm going to be taking a look at my remix for Byrd. Okay, let's have a listen. So the first thing I did with this remix was actually just to listen to the original and see if anything inspired me. And the first thing that caught my eye was this really cool piano riff. So the first thing I did was actually pitch the sample down by 2 semitones, and then I started to cut up the sample and then rearrange the sample to kind of create a new melody. And once I had that, I did a few other things just to beef up the sound, because this was going to become my main melody. So the first thing I did was duplicate the track and then pan one of the pianos left and one of the pianos right. And this gave me like a really wide stereo image. But the problem is that when you do that, you don't have anything in the middle. No, you don't have any mono sound. So if you were to mono the track, say on a club system or on a phone or something, you wouldn't be able to hear that piano melody very well. So I created a third layer, and that was just for the mono sound. So I actually just used this Cubase plugin and monoed the sound. And then I just EQ'd it, took out some of the bottom end, and that's basically it. I just have this third layer that's playing 3 semitones up, and that's just filling out the melody basically. See, I have a few variations just to break up the melody and change the sort of vibe of it. Cool, so that's pretty much it for the piano. Let's dive into the drums and I'll show you how I make them. Okay, so we're here with the drums, and as you can see, I haven't actually done that much to change the drums. I've used a lot of the original stems with the exception of a few breaks and percussion elements. However, the drums really drastically change in the second chorus, and those are the drums I'm going to be focusing on because it gets a little bit complicated. So I'm just going to play a bit for you, and then we'll dive into how I kind of created this sound. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. So let's break down the elements one by one, and we'll sort of quickly go over what I did to kind of create this pattern. As far as the stock sounds like the kick, the snare, and some of the break elements, they were all taken from the Byrd stems that were sent over. The stems were really good, and I didn't really mess with them at all. Okay, so the only thing I did with the breaks is put a high pass filter on it, and I put that at 700 Hertz, so it's just taking out the low end of the sound. Here's what it sounds without the EQ, and then with the EQ. So you see, I'm not taking out too much, but it's just trying to clean up the low end and allow space for the kick and the bass elements. So now for the main percussion elements. So there's about 10 percussion tracks, and as you can see, I'm pretty organized, and each of the percussion tracks are going into one percussion group. Okay, so to break down the sounds, I mean, really what each individual sound is just a one-shot sound from a sample pack or something that I recorded myself. And they're just a collection of sort of random little sounds, and anyone can do this at home. Honestly, if you just have a microphone and your imagination, you can recreate all these little sounds. And if I go through some of them, this is a drumstick, and this is the sound of someone's breath. This is a sound of me making a kind of percussive sound with my voice. What else do we have here? That's just sounds like someone rustling papers or a crisp packet. Yeah, so as you can see, this is an example of a process sound. It has a phaser on it and a ping pong reverb, and I'm also sending it to a snare reverb as well that I have. And that's just the difference. Like, some of the sounds are completely dry, unprocessed, and some of them have a few effects, a bit of delay and things like that. But I think the idea with drum and bass is that it's so fast that you can't really have too much going on at the same time, because it starts to become too much. So by sort of combining different sounds, but they're not all playing at the same time, I sort of create this rhythm and a different texture than I think you usually hear. Okay, so we're here with the bass tracks, and as you can see, there's 4 different bass tracks that I have. So the first one is a sort of funky bass line. Let me just play that for you. So that's basically the intro, what I call an intro bass, and it's something to go at the beginning of your track, sort of underneath the chords, to give a general vibe of what's going on, but it shouldn't be your main bass, and it shouldn't be overpowering at all, because you still want the chorus to hit pretty hard, and you can't do that if you have a really heavy bass in your intro. Yeah, this is just a preset within Massive. It's called Transient Funk, and I've just applied some processing to that sound. So I'm just going to take all the processing off, and then we'll see what I did to sort of create this sound. Okay, so that's without the effects, and then this is with the effects. Okay, so you can see it's quite a different sound, but the original core sound is there. So the first thing I did was put a ping pong delay on, and that just creates some movement in the sound. And then the next thing I did was use this valve filter. I'm not taking off all the high end of the sound, I'm leaving a tiny bit of it, but it's just making the sound a lot more warmer and less of a synthy sound and more of a sort of funky analog sound, which was the kind of vibe I was going for. Then I just have a simple maximizer on to sort of bring out some of the harmonics. We've got a bit of EQ, just taking out, this looks like 114 hertz, so it must have been a resonant frequency there. Then I just have a L1 limiter from Waves just to cap the sound and sort of compress it, make sure nothing's peeking out, and that's it really for the bass. Okay, let's look at the basses in the chorus. Okay, so as you can see, I split my basses into 2 different sounds. There's the sub, and then the main element of the sound, which is sort of providing the top end of the sound. And the reason I've done this is because if you play your track on any system that doesn't have any low end, for example a phone or a little Bluetooth speaker, then they won't be able to hear your bass basically if you just provide the sub. So I've got this main element of the bass, and that's being provided from Massive. It's just a preset here, and I've tweaked it a little bit. I've got this sort of maximizer from Waves, got a bit of EQ going on here just to roll off the low end of the sound, because as I said, that's being provided by the sub, so I don't want it to conflict with my sub. And then I've got a sausage fattener plugin that's providing quite a lot of distortion to that sound. There's a little bit more EQ going on. I'm taking a little bit more of the low end off, and I'm taking, looks like 292 hertz, which I imagine is sort of clashing with my sub, so I'm just dipping that frequency out. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just going to play this bass sound for you, and then we'll go into how I process the sound. Okay, so there we have it. It's a very fat, greasy bass sound, but with no low end, and that's because it's being provided by my sub. So I'm going to play my sub now. And then the 2 sounds together sound like this. Okay, so let's look at the processing on my Reese bass sound. That's providing the top element of the sound. So what I got is a maximizer from Waves that's just boosting the level. I've got some EQ going on there to cut out the low end of the sound because, as I said, that's been provided by my sub. And then I've got a sausage fattener. That's a distortion plugin just to crunch this sound and really bring out the harmonics of the sound. Next, I'm providing a bit more EQ. You can see I'm rolling off about 100 Hertz, and I've got a little dip about 12.3 dB around 300 Hertz, and that's so it's not going to conflict with my sub again. Okay, so let's look at the sub processing. Well, we got some EQ going on. This is to roll off the top end of the sound. I just want the bottom end on my sub, so I'm rolling off everything until 200 Hertz. And then I just got a sausage fattener plugin. This is one of my favorite plugins, so you'll probably see it quite a lot in this tutorial, just to boost that element of that sub and bring out some of the harmonics again. Cool, I think that's it for the basses. I have this one more bass sound that is heard in the breakdown section. Sounds like this. And that was created in Retrolog. It's just a preset in Retrolog with some distortion from Sausage Fattener and some limiting from Waves again. Okay, so finally we're going to look at the vocals, and then we're going to have a quick look at the effects. So the vocals were provided by Byrd, and they were part of the stems, but I did quite a lot to process these vocals and sort of fatten them up and use them in my own way. So firstly, we can look at the main vocal lead that we have here. As you can hear, there's quite a lot of processing going on here. So let's just break down what's going on. Okay, so the first thing I did was pitch the vocal down 2 semitones, so it's in the same key with the rest of the track. I applied some light compression. So yeah, quite basic settings, just boosting the input, and I'm leaving the attack and the release where it is really. Okay, so the next thing I'm doing is applying a little bit of EQ. As you can see, I'm rolling off about 150 Hertz of the vocal, and then I'm applying some surgical EQ just to take out some of the resonant frequencies of the vocal. Okay, so the last vocal element is something that I actually recorded myself. So I'm just going to play you what it sounds like in the track, and then I'm going to show you how I made it. Okay, so that was actually my own voice. So I'm just going to show you what it sounds like without any processing on, and then we're going to go through and see how I made it. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so quite a different style of vocal. So what I did was set up the microphone in a very similar position to this, record the vocal in at a normal pitch relative to the track, and then I applied a gate. That's just to cut some of the background noise out of the sound. Some compression from my favorite little compressor plugin. This is a plugin by iZotope. It's called Vinyl. And basically what it does is that it emulates old vinyl records and the sound coming out from old vinyl. So let me show you what it sounds like without the vinyl plugin on, and then with it. Wow, that's incredible. Wow, that's incredible. So you see, it changed the sound quite a lot. It degrades the audio of the sound, and that's actually the kind of effect I was going for. I was kind of going for the effect of it sounding like a sample. Then I used a sound shifter from Waves, so I'm pitching the vocal up by 6 semitones. And then what am I else doing? I'm applying some EQ just to roll off the bottom end of the sample. So this is like just rolling off about 300 Hertz. There's some multi-band compression going on, and this is to reduce some resonant frequencies in my voice. So I'm taking off, what is this, from around 2K to 5K. There's a dip about 7.7 dB. So every time this resonant frequency hits, it's going to duck the sound and compress that sound. Some more EQ going on, taking off about 200 Hz. That's just to make sure that nothing comes through in the bottom end of that sound. And then we've got some reverb and delay going on just through a send effect. Let's have a look at that channel, vocal reverb. So I've got this reverb plugin from Cubase, just a very simple hall reverb with a ping pong delay and a stereo delay going on the send. Okay, so that about wraps things up for this video. If you'd like to listen to the full track, the link will be down in the description. Thanks for watching.